in many cases, there is also a quiet awareness of time that shapes these choices. Older people know, often more clearly than anyone else, that their remaining years are limited. This awareness changes priorities in a profound way. Pleasing others, keeping appearances, or tolerating emotional pain for the sake of family unity can start to feel meaningless when measured against the value of calm mornings, honest conversations, and days lived without tension. What may look like withdrawal from the outside can feel from the inside like finally choosing how to spend the most precious currency left: time. There is also the weight of being misunderstood for too long. Some older adults feel that no matter how many times they explain themselves, their feelings are minimized or dismissed as stubbornness, age, or bitterness. Over time, this creates a sense of invisibility. When a person feels unseen by those closest to them, the bond weakens naturally. Silence then becomes easier than repeating the same explanations to people who seem unwilling to truly listen. Another layer is the exhaustion that comes from emotional labor. Many older parents spend decades holding families together, mediating conflicts, forgiving repeatedly, and putting their own needs last. When they stop doing this, relationships sometimes collapse, revealing how one-sided they were all along. Cutting off contact is not always an act of anger. Sometimes it is simply the moment someone decides they are done carrying everyone else's emotional weight. There is also fear involved, though it is rarely spoken aloud. Fear of becoming dependent, fear of being controlled, fear of losing one's voice. Some older people distance themselves preemptively, believing it is safer to step back than to slowly be pushed aside or treated like a burden. Independence, even if lonely at times, can feel more dignified than closeness that comes with pity or dominance. Shame can play a role as well. Older adults may feel ashamed of needing help, of past mistakes, or of not becoming the parent or grandparent they imagined they would be. Rather than face judgment, real or imagined, they retreat. Distance becomes a way to preserve self-respect and avoid painful comparisons or conversations. It's also important to acknowledge that growth does not stop with age. Some people evolve emotionally later in life, gaining clarity about patterns of manipulation, neglect, or emotional harm that they normalized for years. When this awareness finally arrives, it can be shocking and destabilizing. Cutting ties may feel drastic, but to the person experiencing this awakening, it feels honest and necessary. From the outside, family members often interpret the cutoff as cruelty, ingratitude, or punishment. But for the older person, it is often the opposite of cruelty. It is mercy toward themselves. Mercy from constant disappointment. Mercy from old arguments that never resolve. Mercy from pretending that love exists where there is only obligation. None of this means that the pain on the other side is not real. Children and relatives who are cut off may feel abandoned, confused, or deeply hurt. Sometimes there are misunderstandings that could have been healed with different communication or earlier intervention. But understanding the inner world of the older person can shift the narrative from blame to comprehension. In the end, when older people cut off their families, it is rarely about one single event. It is about years adding up, patterns repeating, and a final decision to live whatever time remains with as much emotional honesty and peace as possible. Whether one agrees with the choice or not, it is often a deeply human response to a lifetime of complex relationships, unmet needs, and the quiet desire to end one's story on one's own terms. And yet, even after making that choice, many older people do not feel triumph or relief in the way others imagine. There is often a quiet ache that remains, a background sadness that never fully disappears. Cutting off family does not erase love, memory, or attachment. It simply creates distance from pain. On quiet evenings, memories still surface: children's laughter, shared meals, moments when hope felt real. The decision is not about forgetting those moments, but about accepting that they belong to the past and may not be safely recreated in the present. Some older adults also struggle with guilt, especially if they were raised to believe that family bonds must be preserved at all costs. They may question themselves repeatedly, wondering if they should have tried one more time, spoken one more word, forgiven one more offense. But guilt and self-doubt coexist with a deeper knowing that returning would likely mean returning to the same emotional wounds. Over time, This inner conflict often settles into a bittersweet acceptance rather than certainty. There is also the reality of loneliness, which many people misunderstand. Loneliness does not always come from being alone, it often comes from being emotionally unsafe with others. For some older people, solitude feels calmer than connection filled with tension or rejection. They learn to find companionship in routines, in nature, in books, in faith, or in brief but sincere interactions with strangers who treat them with simple respect. This quieter form of living may not look full from the outside, but it can feel deeply sufficient on the inside. In some cases, distance becomes a mirror. When older adults step away, it forces everyone involved to confront truths that were previously avoided. Sometimes family members reflect, change, and grow, sometimes they don't. Older people who have chosen distance often come to accept that they cannot force understanding, remorse, or maturity in others. Letting go of that hope can be painful, but it can also be freeing. It is also worth recognizing that not all cutoffs are permanent. Some are pauses rather than endings. Time, therapy, personal growth, or life events can soften perspectives on both sides. But reconciliation, when it happens, tends to occur on different terms. Older adults who reconnect often do so with clearer boundaries and less illusion, no longer willing to sacrifice their well-being for the appearance of harmony. At a deeper level, this separation is often part of a larger life review. As people age, they naturally reflect on who they were, what they endured, and what they are proud of or regret. In this process, authenticity becomes more important than approval. They may realize that living truthfully, even if it disappoints others, feels more meaningful than continuing roles that no longer fit who they have become. For those trying to understand an older family member who has pulled away, the hardest lesson is that love does not always look like closeness. Sometimes it looks like distance chosen to prevent further harm. Sometimes it looks like silence that protects dignity. And sometimes it looks like a boundary that arrives too late to save the relationship, but just in time to save the person. In the final chapters of life, many older people are not trying to teach lessons or make statements. They are simply trying to rest emotionally, to wake up without dread, to go to sleep without replaying arguments in their minds, to live with a sense of coherence between how they feel and how they live. When they cut off family, it is often the last, difficult step toward that inner alignment, a choice shaped not by a lack of love, but by a deep need for peace. And even in that peace, there is often a tenderness that never fully hardens. Older people who step away rarely become cold or indifferent. If anything, they become more sensitive to the weight of human connection. They notice kindness more deeply, feel sincerity more strongly, and are often moved by small gestures in ways they never were before. A simple greeting, a moment of being listened to, a shared silence can mean more than grand declarations of loyalty ever did. Distance sharpens their awareness of what real connection feels like. There is also a quiet reckoning with legacy. As time moves forward, older adults begin to understand that they cannot control how they will be remembered. They may be spoken of as difficult, distant, or unforgiving. Accepting this can be painful, but many eventually make peace with it. They realize that being misunderstood is sometimes the price of self-respect, and that living truthfully matters more than being remembered fondly by those who never truly saw them. Some discover a surprising strength in this phase of life. After years of compromise, they learn that they can survive disappointment, solitude, and judgment. This strength is not loud or defiant, it is quiet and steady. It shows up in the ability to sit with one's thoughts, to grieve without collapsing, and to choose calm over chaos again and again. For many, this inner strength feels like a late but meaningful reward for everything they endured earlier in life. At the same time, there is often compassion, not just for themselves, but even for the family they stepped away from. With distance comes perspective. They may see how patterns were passed down, how wounds were inherited, how love was expressed imperfectly because no one involved truly knew how to do better at the time. This understanding does not excuse harm, but it softens the sharp edges of resentment. It allows space for sorrow without turning it into bitterness. Many older people come to hold two truths at once: see that they were hurt, and that those who hurt them were also shaped by their own limitations and fears. In this space, anger often gives way to clarity. The need to prove a point or win an argument fades. What remains is a simple recognition of what is possible and what is not. Some relationships, no matter how much history they carry, cannot become safe or nurturing. Accepting this reality can feel like a quiet grief, similar to mourning a life that might have been but never was. Yet this grief is often cleaner, less chaotic, than the constant pain of hoping for change that never comes. As days pass, routines form. Older adults who have cut off family often create small rituals that anchor them: a morning walk, a familiar cup of tea, a favorite chair by the window. These ordinary moments become sacred. They provide structure and meaning without emotional cost. In these moments, life feels manageable, even gentle, and that gentleness becomes something worth protecting. There is also a subtle shift in how they view love. Love is no longer defined by obligation, blood ties, or endurance. It becomes defined by mutual respect, emotional safety, and presence. Some find this kind of love in friendships, in labors, in late-life companions, or even in brief but genuine connections. Others find it in spiritual practice, in service, or in quiet contemplation. Love, they learn, does not have to come from family to be real. For those on the other side of the distance, understanding this inner transformation can be difficult. It is tempting to focus only on what was lost, on the absence, on the silence. But often that silence is not empty. It is full of reflection, healing, and a hard-won sense of self. Reaching out with curiosity instead of accusation, with humility instead of demands, may sometimes open a door that anger never could. And if that door never opens, there is still something to be learned from the distance itself. It is a reminder that relationships are living things, shaped over time by care, listening, and respect. When those elements are missing for too long, even the strongest bonds can fray. In the end, when older people cut off their families, it is not a rejection of love itself. It is a rejection of pain disguised as love. It is the final act of choosing honesty over pretense, peace over turmoil, and dignity over endurance. It is a decision made not lightly but thoughtfully, in the quiet awareness that life, at its end, asks us not how much we endured, but how truthfully we lived. And living truthfully, at that stage, often means letting go of illusions that once kept everything together. Illusions that effort would eventually be rewarded, that patience would transform others, that love alone could fix patterns that were never questioned. Older people who reach this point are not naive anymore. They have seen promises repeated and broken, apologies given without change, affection offered only when it was convenient. What fades is not their capacity to love, but their willingness to lie to themselves. There is also a quiet humility that comes with age, a recognition that they too made mistakes. Many older adults carry regret about words they said too harshly, moments when they were absent, times when fear guided their choices instead of courage. Cutting off family is not always a declaration of moral superiority. Sometimes it is an acknowledgement that continuing the relationship would only keep old roles alive, roles that prevent everyone involved from growing beyond the past. With distance, self-forgiveness slowly becomes possible. Away from constant triggers and conflicts, older people can finally reflect without defensiveness. They begin to see themselves not just as parents, siblings, or elders, but as human beings who did the best they could with what they knew at the time. This self-compassion is fragile, and protecting it often requires silence and space. As the years pass, to explain themselves diminishes. At first, many older adults feel a strong need to justify their decision, to be understood, to have their pain acknowledged. But eventually, that need softens. They realize that not everyone is capable of hearing their truth, and that understanding cannot be forced. Peace grows when they stop trying to be believed and focus instead on being at ease with themselves. Some days are heavier than others. Holidays, birthdays, familiar songs, or old photographs can reopen emotions they thought were settled. On those days, the choice to stay distant may feel harder. But even then, there is often a deeper steadiness underneath, a sense that returning would not bring comfort, only confusion. The pain of absence, though real, is quieter than the pain of constant disappointment. In rare, gentle moments, they may still wish well for those they left behind, not in a dramatic or sentimental way, but with a simple hope that everyone finds peace in their own way. This does not mean reconciliation is desired or possible. It means the heart, even when guarded, has not turned bitter. It has simply learned where it is safe to rest. And so life continues, smaller perhaps, quieter certainly, but more honest. The world narrows, yet becomes clearer. Conversations are fewer, but more sincere. Days are simpler, but less conflicted. In this simplicity, many older people find something they had been missing for decades: a sense of alignment between their inner world and their outer life. When viewed from the outside, the story may look like loss. From the inside, it often feels like release. Not a release from love, but from the constant strain of pretending that pain is connection. In choosing distance, they are not abandoning family as much as they are finally choosing themselves, not out of selfishness, but out of a deep understanding that whatever time remains deserves to be lived with clarity, calm and quiet dignity. And as they move forward, there is often a profound reevaluation of what matters most. Trivial disputes and endless arguments no longer hold power over them. Years of experience teach that energy is precious, and once spent on conflict or emotional strain, it cannot be reclaimed. They learn to invest their attention only where it nourishes rather than drains them, which may mean embracing solitude more fully, or selectively welcoming people into their lives who offer genuine kindness and understanding. In this stage, time itself becomes a teacher. The daily rhythms of life, the sunrise, the turning seasons, the sound of familiar footsteps in the house, begin to carry deeper meaning. These small, consistent elements provide comfort in a way that human interactions sometimes cannot. Older people often develop a sensitivity to the subtleties of life: a quiet conversation, a shared laugh with a neighbor, the gentle presence of a pet, or simply the act of being present with their own thoughts. These experiences, though simple, can become richer than any relationship fraught with tension or disappointment. There is also an unspoken courage in choosing this path. Stepping away from family is rarely easy. It is one of the most challenging emotional decisions a person can make. It requires facing the potential for judgment, misunderstanding, and isolation. It requires confronting the inner voice that questions one's own choices. Yet for many, that courage is intertwined with relief. The relief comes from no longer having to navigate the complicated web of obligations, the subtle resentments, and the unspoken expectations that once defined their daily life. Relief in this sense becomes a form of liberation. Spirituality, reflection, or personal philosophy often deepen during this period. Many older adults turn inward, seeking meaning and connection beyond the immediate family sphere. They may explore meditation, prayer, art, literature, or nature as avenues to experience a sense of wholeness and peace. These pursuits allow them to nurture their inner life in ways that family relationships may have constrained or complicated in earlier years. There is also an acceptance of impermanence. With the passage of time, older people be acutely aware that everything is transient: the joy, the pain, the people around them, and even life itself. This awareness brings clarity. Attachment to conflict, resentment, or disappointment becomes less significant when measured against the vast scale of a lifetime. By stepping back, they are not rejecting connection entirely. They are prioritizing the quality and depth of what remains, rather than clinging to patterns that no longer serve them. The decision to distance themselves can sometimes inspire reflection in the family as well. While initially it may provoke anger, confusion, or hurt, over time, some relatives begin to understand the gravity of the choice. They may recognize patterns they were previously blind to, reflect on how their behavior affected the older person, and even reassess their own approach to relationships. In this indirect way, the distance, while painful, can become a mirror, offering lessons that might never have been learned otherwise. Ultimately, the choice to cut off family is rarely about punishment or malice. It is about self-preservation, dignity, and the pursuit of peace after decades of emotional labor. It is about reclaiming agency at a stage in life when autonomy can feel like one of the last and most precious freedoms. For many older adults, it is the culmination of a lifetime of experiences, the final act of shaping their own narrative, rather than allowing it to be dictated than unmet expectations and unresolved conflicts of others. And in this space of carefully chosen solitude, many discover a surprising richness, a clarity of mind, a steadiness of heart, and a freedom to live on their own terms. It is a quiet triumph, one that may go unnoticed by the world, but which resonates deeply within. In the stillness of their chosen lives, they often find a form of contentment eluded them in earlier years, a life no longer burdened by the weight of unresolved family dynamics, but defined instead by self-respect, awareness, and the simple, profound satisfaction of finally being true to themselves. Even as the days grow shorter and the future becomes uncertain, this truth remains. Choosing peace over conflict, honesty over pretense, and dignity over obligation is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of courage. It is a declaration that one's own well-being matters, that the final chapter does have to be lived with integrity, and that even when love is complicated, life can still hold meaning, beauty, and quiet joy.